Hey, what's up, everybody? Video 44 coming at you with another video. All right, so, Lakers. With Anthony Davis having the issues that he's having, and I want to credit Anthony Newman that's always commenting on my channel. Shout out to Anthony. My thinking is, I agree with him. I agree with Anthony. We have got to find a backup center that we trust, that can give AD a breather on nights like this, where we need him to play so bad because we're going up against Alperen Sengun, and probably would be best for him sitting without it determining whether or not we have a puncher's chance. Problem is, who's going to be that person, man? Because I don't want to take on Clint Capella's contract. It's bad. And some of these other centers aren't worth what they're paid either. And if they are, teams ain't letting them go. Do you just bite the bullet and take on the Clint Capella contract? Because one thing I do note about Clint Capella from owning him on one of my fantasy teams this year is that he isn't having a bad season. He's extremely consistent. So he may not be worth $20 million, but from game to game to game, you can get consistent play out of him. You can count him in to play good. Well is the word you want to use. He's going to play well this season. He's always been a contributor. I've always been a fan of his. I just am not in the business of overplaying him, especially knowing that our coach may not use him consistently. And see, that's one of those situations where we always say we got to manage our team properly around Darvin Ham so that we don't have Darvin bringing down the value of whomever we have. That's the situation for me in regards to Clint specifically. I don't know that Darvin's even going to play Clint. And I'm not trying to bring Clint in at $20 million if I'm Jeanie Buss, knowing that possibility is in place. I can utilize my cap space a bit better to fit other needs. But at the end of the day, Anthony Davis being out can't be the determining factor of whether or not we have enough size to compete. And even though he's been so very healthy this year, you don't want to push it. Especially when he starts taking on knick-knack injuries like he just picked up against that Golden State Warriors franchise. So, for me, I'm inclined to think that we should pivot toward trying to find a center and maybe canvassing the lead for a Nick Richards. For somebody who can play that position in a way that doesn't have us needing to play him, but just the same, will be somebody that we can utilize properly so that when Anthony Davis is in need of a break, we can have that player come in and keep us upright at the center position, because that is extremely important for our basketball club going forward. I just don't think that we want to play around with Anthony Davis's health. We've been blessed, but you don't want to push it. So that's my thing. I do not honestly believe that Christian Wood is the answer there. I think Christian Wood is a piece that I'm keeping and I'm happy to have, but I don't trust him to be my center as it pertains to last line of defense. He's playing good defense. I saw him do some good defensive things against the Warriors. It's not about me believing that he's the inept defensive player that I thought he was when we were picking him up. I actually think he's a much improved defensive player as a Laker than he has been anywhere else, in my opinion. But just like in the other aspect of this conversation, I don't want to push it. I don't want to push it. I don't think he's an amazing defender, and I don't want to toy with his health, asking him to bang with players he shouldn't be banging with. We need to get somebody for that. The problem is, when I start thinking about guys like the one that the Memphis Grizzlies just dropped, starts with a B, I can't think of his name, but Bismack Biyombo, I don't know that you can win that game that he's going to be filling in for AD. I don't think he's good enough for you to win. He can fill in as a big body, but only on games where Anthony is expected to play and you just want to put in some, kind of limit Anthony's minutes. You don't want him out there for Anthony's position in the defense and expect you're going to get a dynamic that's good enough to help you succeed. I do not expect that from a guy like him, especially at this stage in his career. So you got to find that piece. And I haven't done, I ain't done my due diligence to say I know who that piece would be, obviously. But that is going to be the equation for our coach, our GM rather. And that's something that we've been talking about for a little while now. I'm not going to sit up here and say he's failed us because he did try to bring in Jackson Hayes. We thought Jackson was going to be that guy, and it just hasn't been that. And it isn't the easiest thing to find centers. So we know that. But we got to find one. We got to find somebody who can have fill in for Anthony Davis, who ain't going to be so limited that it doesn't even matter that we have him out there or not, because we're still going to lose. We don't want that player to be that limited. So for me, that's key, man. It's key. Finding that piece and getting that piece on this roster. Maybe you can find him in a buyout market. We don't know what the buyout market holds. One thing that I've neglected to speak about is who the Lakers have been targeting the buyout market as it pertains to these rumors that are coming out. I'm excited about both of these players as buyout candidates, Kyle Lowry and Gordon Hayward. If that does indeed manifest, I know likely you will see that manifest in regards to Kyle, since he just got traded to the Hornets. I don't see him playing for the Hornets at all. And since Gordon is a Hornet as well, maybe they'd be willing to buy him out as well. So those are the players. The Lakers, from what I understand, the Lakers are confident they'll be able to get both of them dudes. I love it. I wanted Gordon Hayward on a decent contract forever. Gordon Hayward has been one of my favorite players in the league before he even got here. When he was in college, I was a fan of Gordon Hayward. And he just hasn't been in a position to be acquirable based on the contracts that have been given to him over the years. It was never responsible to bring him in. It really wasn't. It was never responsible to bring him in throughout the course of his career. But now, with him being a buyout candidate, finally ready to sign a contract that will be friendly for a team, it's time for all teams to go after Gordon Hayward. He's a game changer. Even now, he still plays at a level that you need. Now, you don't expect him to play too many games because he's injury prone at this point. We know that. But you also don't ask him to be more than your seventh or sixth man. Like that's his role on your team. For us, we would likely have him start, depending on what type of moves we make. We definitely want him removing Taurean Prince from the equation. Bringing him in makes us a lot better. I don't know if he can guard really at this stage in his career, but I don't care. At that level, he's just going to be so much better for us at the small forward position. But if you have an ideal space for him, he's not starting, I don't believe. But that's what it comes down to. I definitely want us to get Gordon Hayward. And I think, ironically enough, Kyle Lowry has always been one of my favorite point guards too, even though you would never actually get that from me listening to me talk about him because of the different circumstances he's been in this league, for which he was either opposite of our team, going with the Heat or the Toronto Raptors. But I was a fan of his when he was with the Memphis Grizzlies way back in the day, when he was just a chubby point guard off the bench. He was somebody that would come in when their point guard situation would be bad and get a triple-double and show people exactly what he was going to turn into. I started appreciating him back then when he was a Memphis Grizzlies. This was probably 20 years ago, almost 15 years ago. But Kyle Lowry was the man back then. He ended up going to the Rockets, showed me that he was a fantastic player there, all-star level player there, and then ended up in Toronto where he won an NBA championship. The only thing with him was always injury issues. Could he stay healthy? But once he got to Toronto, he really started to establish himself as a fantastic borderline Hall of Fame player. I don't know if he makes the Hall of Fame or not, but he's up there, man. So for me, it's like it would be great to finally have him on this roster. I still think he's one of those old guys that can contribute very well. Not every night, but there are going to be nights where he contributes quite a bit, particularly coming from behind the arc, shooting the ball and driving at the rim, where he has just this innate ability to make scoop shots and get and ones and stuff like that falling to the ground. He's a fantastic facilitator, always has been gifted in that way, and he's a big body, so he's going to rebound the ball a little more than one would expect someone to. So that's my thing with Kyle Lowry. That's a no-brainer. If you can get him on $1 million contract, you win. That's how I look at it. If you can get both of those Charlotte Hornet guys on vet minimum contracts, you're gonna make this team basically half better than it is right now. We immediately become 50% better, in my opinion, just by adding those two players, because it will shake our rotation up enough to where you got higher level talent you can rely upon in the Taurean Princes and some of these other guys who we're just gonna have to wait on. It makes you significantly older, but you still will have the young players in theory to sub in, and I think that these are older guys that you like having on the floor. They're not your 5 point a game average vets. These are guys that are perennial all-stars, both of them. So they're ready to win a championship. I think, especially Gordon Hayward. Of course, Kyle Lowry has one with Toronto, and I'm on board. If you can sign these dudes, you bring them in. Period. There's nothing to talk about. That is a no-brainer. That is obvious, and that gives us upgrades in some very key areas of our bench. And so that's really what I got to say about those two. I hope the Lakers can pull it off, but I don't think it gets us a championship until we have the piece in place that gives AD a breather. We're just relying upon AD to be healthy all throughout. He can't even take a week off without us losing just about every one of the games that he's out. And although he's been healthy, as I said, that is not something you want to continue to force your success to be relying upon. So that's what I got to say about that. At any rate, man, that's really where my head is as far as the Lakers are concerned. Last I heard, the Lakers are, when it comes to trade rumors, particularly this DeJounte Murray trade rumor, I honestly don't know what is going on. I really don't know. I would be, at this point, surprised no matter what happens, if that makes any sense. If we don't trade for DeJounte, I'm kind of surprised. If we do trade for DeJounte, I'm kind of surprised. I just don't know what to think anymore. I really don't. With both of these players having played at such a high level over the last 3 weeks, it's reasonable to say that both teams would probably just try to hold on to those players, especially the Hawks, given the fact that they got DeJounte on a good contract for 4 years. So, they could very easily just say, nah, we don't have any urgency to move this player, especially for anything other than what we absolutely want. And unless they want to pull the trigger on a rebuild, for which I don't think they have to do mid-season. You know what I mean? So I think it's reasonable to think that DeJounte could be a Hawk to the end of the season. It's very reasonable to think that right at this point, especially if the Lakers don't up the ante. And on our side, why would we want to up the ante? With D'Lo playing as well as he is, we won a big-time game against the Golden State Warriors just now. It looked like an NBA Finals-type game. He was a big part of why we were successful. I think it's reasonable to think that we may have turned a corner as it pertains to our chemistry, at least in the short term, while we're going through this process of winning these games, scoring a lot of points. Vanderbilt being healthy changes the dynamic for which you were leaning upon D'Lo to play better defensively, and that's a big key component to this as well. Vanderbilt's 100% healthy and hasn't been all season long, so a lot of the stuff that we were frustrated about was really glaring because we didn't have that Vanderbilt piece flying around doing all the stuff that Vando does. Now that he's in place, you got a bigger Band-Aid on the D'Lo Austin lineups, and you can get the most out of those lineups for which you want, because those are two of your best players. So it's like, and now that we got that in place, all we need is our coach to play him, or for us to replace Taurean with another Vando who can also be in that lineup to bring those guys together and match their defensive plays. Once you have that piece in place, it may not be as necessary to move on from D'Lo at all, because all the stuff that we were complaining about gets masked, and then we're just left with him to play well. And in situations where it looks like he's starting to get a little more comfortable in the offense, he's healthier than he's been, and the urgency for him to remind himself of where he wants to be in his career hasn't been in place with these trade rumors. I have reason to believe that we can be optimistic that he has a good rest of the season. We can be optimistic that he's going to want to prove himself in these playoffs after having such a bad reputation over the last two. Now, we could very well regress back to the way it was. Maybe he has another injury of some sort, and then we're back to square one. But I don't think you can weigh that against DeJounte Murray as much as to say that DeJounte has had injury issues as well that have kept him out for lengthy periods of time, especially early on in his career. So it's not like you're bringing in an Iron Man. So these are the type of things, it's like, all right, At the end of the day, I don't know that we could have won that game with DeJounte Murray, because I don't think DeJounte Murray comes down and hits that transition three. I don't think DeJounte Murray's – he's going to score in his own way, and he's going to get guys involved, and he's going to be an excellent piece. But he would still rely upon a guy like D'Lo to hit shots like that to carry him home just like we did. So, I don't know if D'Lo can be trusted. I think we have more evidence of the fact that he cannot. But what I can say is some of our on-the-court issues with D'Lo should not, in theory, be as much of a problem anymore now that we have Vando 100% healthy. And that chemistry that he has with Vando is something to be said for, because they played with one another before they got here in Minnesota. So hopefully we can just keep Vando healthy, maybe get us another Vando. That would be something I would be wanting to do. Bruce Brown could be that piece, although he's a bit more expensive. Probably got to move D'Lo to get him, negates the point. Dorian Finney-Smith may be that piece, but I don't necessarily see him as that piece. I personally don't know about that. So for me, it's just, when I look at the Lakers and what I think the Lakers need, I don't think we need to worry about having to get DeJounte Murray in order to be successful. I think we actually have more pressing needs at this point, if I'm being completely honest. DeJounte is more of a comfort contract for the future that allows you the ability to say that I got somebody in place on a good contract next to AD, Bron, and Austin Reeves that I don't have to worry about making any decisions about anytime soon, who I can likely retrade for other pieces if I need to. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's a better fit for your win now timeline. Not necessarily. Not when you consider what this team is starting to develop. And what does his role become? What does Vando's role become when you bring in DeJounte? You don't need Vando as much. Does what Vando does how do you say that? Anyway, get negated by the fact that DeJounte is a different type of piece and doesn't need him to be that. Now are you accentuating Vando's weaknesses, not being able to score off the ball in theory, for, when you have him on the floor trying to make up for defense that isn't missing, if that makes any sense. Because DeJounte is a better defender. DeJounte needs to work on his off-ball offense. D'Lo needs someone to help mask his defense. And you can have D'Lo help you with the spacing that Vando would otherwise require for being a player that doesn't create any space at all. So it's like, I'm not saying DeJounte is a non-shooter, but your spacing is a little worse in theory if you're bringing in DeJounte, moving Vando with Vando and DeJounte lineups. So these are different things. I think Vando's role could potentially change if you're bringing in DeJounte. It won't have to change if you're keeping D'Lo. So I just think that the Vando piece is so important. If Vando goes down with another injury, we're back to square one, though, and that's the problem. Can't have Vando go out and still use Austin and D'Lo. Not if you're trying to actually succeed. Not if you're going to play Taurean Prince there. So a lot of this has to do with the coach's choices, man. At the end of the day, I don't think that we're too far away from having that piece in place. You just got to move Max Christie to the 3 and let him be that sub in for Rando. Because Max Christie can do a lot of those masking of defensive issues. And he creates a space that Vando doesn't. I just don't think we utilize Max Christie's defense enough or ask him to do enough of those type of things. And I think he may be capable physically of doing them with his length and his defense and his ability to switch side to side. I would have him running defensive drills with Vanderbilt from here on out if I were the coaching staff. I would have him training with Vando all day long because I want to maximize Max's ability to do Vando-like things. Because I think that might be our answer if we can't make a trade. He's not as big as Vando, and he's not going to be able to guard some of the same people Vando does. But in terms of some of the roaming and masking of defensive issues, I don't know that he's not capable of doing some of that so long as he just trains with Vando. So these are the type of things I would be doing if I were in the Laker front office, or rather in their coaching staff. I would be training Vando and Max together for the sole reason of putting Max at the 3 and putting him in lineups with D'Lo and Austin. Now, I know that's a 3-guard lineup. I know that. But Max don't have to necessarily be considered a guard. He's big enough to be the 3 in my opinion, especially if he puts on some weight. puts on muscle, for which he's already in the gym. You can see that. So for the sole purpose of trying to make my D'Lo and Austin lineups work, I'm going to throw Max at the 3, and I'm removing Taurean out of them lineups entirely. He's not going to be in them lineups. I'm only going to put Taurean on the floor to hit threes. When I need fresh threes, he's going to be on the floor to do that. After that, he's not going to be on the floor at all. My rotation switches up entirely. And maybe I put Rui at the 3. I think Rui's a faster player than people think he is. I've been saying that all year. He showed me a little of that against Golden State in certain key moments. I don't think you can necessarily run him at the 3 all the time, but for the purpose of trying to get away with it in certain key lineups, I think you can get away with it. I don't think we have to play Taurean in every lineup we have. In fact, I don't think it's best to. And our coach is prone to do that because he doesn't believe in Max at the 3. He doesn't believe in Rui at the 3. And, Vando doesn't space the floor. So it's like by default, he's just going to use Taurean in all these lineups that require space. And you leave so much open, etc. We've already talked about it 176 times. So for me, that's what I want to see. I want to see either more Max at the 3 or swap it and put Austin at the 3 and let Max run the 2 with D'Lo at the 1, AD Bron Vando, AD Vando, however you want to do that with the front court. I want to see how that looks. And just get Taurean the hell out of there, man, and just see if we can get away with it. If it doesn't work for whatever reason, then we get away from that. But I'd like to see that lineup on the floor. I would like to see that. Vando, Rui front court. If you want to give Bron and AD breaks at the, run Rui and Vando at the small ball 5 and 4. I don't love small ball 5 and 4, but again, we don't have the center position in place in theory. But then again, Christian Wood, I'd love to see Christian Wood on the floor more, so that may never be necessary for me. But these are the type of things I'm brainstorming as far as rotations. And how do I get Taurean Prince the hell up out of here? Honestly, I'm saying it with a straight face. I'm dead serious. How do I get him the hell up out of here, man? How do I remove him from the lineup entirely and still have cohesiveness with my defense, my offense, my scoring, and everything else? Because I know better, man. Taurean, I'm not saying Taurean needs to be in China per se, but he almost there, man. He almost there, yo. And the last person to know it is Coach. He's the last person to know that. So for me, it's like, what lineups do I have that work? Because I know Max Lewis is not ready yet. He ain't going to be ready till next year. I know that. And I'm fine with that, I guess. I mean, I would love for him to be a bit more ready-made, but who knows if he is ready-made. We never use him. But point is, we're not going to see him till next year. So I don't have the luxury of putting him at the 3. So can I put Max at the 3? Can I put Rui at the 3? Can I remove Taurean and get away with the spacing issues? So we'll never know that because our coach ain't going to do what I'm thinking. Unfortunately, he's going to do what he's thinking. And so I expect for him to at least have taken the data from the last game and start Vando tonight. Or if he doesn't start Vando tonight, at least make sure that Vando gets the minimum amount of minutes after starting. Because that's really what it's about. It ain't about who starts the game more so than just making sure that the majority of the minutes that you have D'Lo and Austin on the floor together, Vando's on the floor with them. And you ain't going to remove AD and Bron, so that would be the person removing that situation. So that's my thing, man. Just, look, man, I am one of the biggest Taurean Prince naysayers, I guess, on the internet. I really am. I've been tired of Taurean Prince since we drafted him. Since we picked him up. It ain't personal. I don't dislike him. I don't even dislike him as a piece. I just think that he's heavily overly utilized, heavily relied upon to do things that he's really not best for doing. And at this stage in his career, the only person who thinks he is a player that you should be asking to do those things is Darvin Ham, probably an entire league, man. Nobody else would even ask him to do any of this stuff. And as I've told you guys before, I don't think that Taurean would have been starting for the Minnesota Timberwolves unless they absolutely needed him to. And in their case, they did. That's why he's a starter. That doesn't mean that you send him to another team and he's still a damn starter. It just means that the Minnesota Timberwolves didn't have that great of a roster. That was it. And since they moved on from him, do you see where they are? Top of the Western Conference. I really don't think that is a coincidence. Not by any stretch of the imagination. So that's what I'm just saying to all of you guys, man. I hope that our team can understand this, take it seriously, put this player in positions to do things that he's good at, and not ask him to do things that otherwise is not in his wheelhouse, having him looking worse for it and otherwise being overutilized. So that's really what it comes down to, man. Hopefully the Lakers can get us Gordon Hayward. That would help a lot, in my humble opinion. And that's pretty much what I got to say, man. I'm going to find out what the hell they just put on my door here. And, of course, listen back to this video. I encourage everybody to enjoy the game tonight at 5 o'clock. Go check out my pregame video for the Lakers and the Rockets. And that's pretty much what I got to say. My name is BDO44. I thank you all for watching. I'm out.